Our profiling suggests a clear motive, confirming this wasn't a random act of violence, but a calculated strike. Two figures sat opposite him. One was the primary interrogator, a man who had seen it all. His pathetic excuse about writing a thriller wasn't just a fabrication, it was a psychological middle finger to the Bureau. It hinted at a sociopathic depth that removed all boundaries. Then came the $2 million incentive. Dante pivoted, laying out the forensic accounting report with the cold precision of a surgeon. The data didn't just show a man in a tight spot. It sketched a man drowning in a total fiscal meltdown. His balances were thousands of dollars into the red. Every credit line was bled dry. Mortgage arrears were piling up, with foreclosure looming in under 60 days. His liabilities had ballooned past $250,000. Dante linked that fiscal panic to Nancy's current testament, which split her multi-million-dollar holdings between her daughters. Nancy's death meant a $2 million windfall for the suspect's spouse. That payday would wipe his slate clean and vanish every ghost in his closet instantly. Special Agent Russell Dante brought 23 years of violent crimes experience to the table, projecting a deceptive, fatherly aura. But a clock was ticking. In mere days, Nancy was set to sign a new will, slashing her daughter's cut. He was fully aware of the legal deadline. He'd caught her discussing the update over dinner. Suddenly, the mosaic of the crime came into terrifying focus. This wasn't a ransom play. It was a sprint against a notary's pen. Every sunrise brought her closer to signing away his only ticket out of the abyss. Those searches regarding her medical survival window weren't just dark thoughts anymore. They were metrics for a homicide. With the motive secured, Dante shifted gears in the interview room. The aggressive heat vanished. He lowered his tone, feigning empathy, suggesting things might have just gone sideways. Maybe the target wasn't supposed to get hurt. Maybe he just wanted to shake her up. Flanking him was a junior operative specializing in behavioral analysis, the kind of person trained to spot a pulse spike. This psychological pivot hit the mark. His internal fortress, fractured by the evidence, started to buckle under the silent weight of the interrogation. Moisture welled in his eyes as he gave up his first truth. "I knew Marcus was underwater," he whispered. "I threw him some cash to help out." We didn't know yet how far that thread would pull. That tiny confession was the hairline fracture in his armor. Thinking half-truths might buy him a way out, the suspect began spinning a fresh narrative. He copped to the funding, but pinned the whole abduction on his volatile cousin, Marcus. His new story? Marcus had gone rogue, fueled by overheard scraps of family business. He was trying to downgrade himself from mastermind to a mere misguided bystander. He was banking on the code of silence, hoping his partner wouldn't sink him on the capital charges. An open ledger sat between them, with a pen hovering, waiting to document the inevitable cracks in the story. His entire survival depended on one gamble: that Marcus wouldn't talk. Dante shattered that hope with a single look. He leaned in, cold and steady, and broke him. Marcus is in the next box, and his story doesn't match yours. The blood once again abandoned the suspect's face. Dante laid it out. Faced with decades in a federal cage, the cousin's loyalty evaporated. He'd flipped. Every dark secret Marcus held was now on the table. He pinpointed the exact diner where they plotted, and the dark lot where the payoffs occurred. He shared insider knowledge of Nancy's floor plan and schedule details Marcus could only have obtained from the son-in-law. Marcus's statement effectively closed the loop. It mirrored the digital trail and banking records, cementing the son-in-law as the operation's true architect. As Dante initiated the Miranda warnings, a protocol heavy with legal weight, the suspect dismissed them with an arrogant wave. Their pact of secrecy and perceived loyalty shattered instantly under the relentless pressure of our federal inquiry. Marcus's full confession, backed by surveillance and witness statements, was presented to the suspect. He was now effectively cornered. The very weapon he sharpened to commit the crime had finally turned against him. No lies remained. No allies stood by. This surrender signaled something far deeper than a mere conviction. Every exit was sealed. Every fabricated reality he clung to had been systematically dismantled and discarded. He was suffocating in a nightmare of his own design with no hope of escape. Anatomy of a lie. After 6 hours in that box, the truth finally surfaced. There was no sudden break, but rather the crushing weight of everything that transpired during the interrogation. An arrogant suspect had been stripped of his armor. This wasn't just about the physical evidence. His refusal of counsel was disturbingly nonchalant, treating the constitutional safeguard as a mere nuisance to his mourning. It happened because his fundamental belief in his own superiority had been methodically torn to shreds. His hubris relied on two myths: that data could be deleted and his performance was flawless. He believed his psychological mask was impenetrable. We proved both were illusions. Every recovered byte and text message struck at the heart of his deception. What this surrender ultimately exposed about the nature of the crime was far more chilling. This wasn't an act of desperation or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a cold, calculated, and meticulously planned sequence of events. He reduced his own mother-in-law, a woman laughing at his table hours earlier, to a mere financial variable. She wasn't family anymore. She was simply a $2 million problem requiring a cold solution. Yet, the most damning proof didn't exist on any hard drive or physical server. In under 3 seconds, his hubris sealed his fate, marking the exact moment his life began to unravel permanently. It lived in the silence across 6 hours of tape, the total absence of human empathy. Amid the fake tears and shifting lies, the son-in-law never once inquired about Nancy's safety. Every emotion was internal. Every reaction was about the consequences he would personally face. The 84-year-old woman with photos of her grandkids was, to him, nothing more than a payout. That moral void was finally exposed and sealed forever under the harsh interrogation lights. The suspect's delivery was seamless, a practiced monologue designed to deflect suspicion from the very beginning. He maintained a posture of total disbelief, dismissing the entire federal investigation as an absurd and tragic misunderstanding. Portraying himself as a devoted son, he spent 90 minutes weaving an intricate, airtight web of affection and false history. Declassified bureau recordings of Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law exposed the inner workings of a killer, stripping away any shadow of doubt. Keeping his palms visible and flat against the cold surface of the table, he mimicked the body language of the innocent, holding an unblinking gaze to project total transparency. Every detail of the victim's final dinner was recounted with suspicious precision, suggesting a script rehearsed into oblivion. He even mentioned their card game, a sentimental touch meant to humanize his relationship with the deceased. He recalled her laughter and stories of her husband before claiming he drove her home around 9:45 p.m. According to him, he saw her safely inside, listening for the deadbolt to engage before disappearing into the night. He salted his testimony with hyper-specific observations, designed to bypass an investigator's natural skepticism. He noted the color of her knitwear and the family photos she carried, details meant to ground his fiction in reality. The story presented a picture-perfect image of a caring protector, positioning himself as the final witness to her safety while subtly steering the interrogation himself. For 90 minutes, he sat there in sleepwear, meticulously crafting the persona of a grieving relative trapped in a nightmare. By questioning our progress, he attempted to hijack the narrative, masquerading as a grieving relative desperate for closure. 90 minutes passed without a single bead of sweat or a nervous twitch, a terrifying display of cold-blooded composure. His calm delivery successfully built a false reality where he was merely the victim of a cruel coincidence. He wanted us to believe this was just a tragic, random assault on a normal American household. Then came the evidence from 2:47 a.m. The atmosphere in the room turned ice cold in an instant. Dante had remained silent for an hour and a half, letting the suspect bury himself in his own flawless narrative. The shift was silent. A simple, heavy look toward his colleague signaled that the games were over. Following a subtle nod, the profiling specialist placed a digital recorder on the table, a harbinger of the coming storm. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the low-frequency buzz of the playback device waiting to speak. The mood shifted violently. The feigned warmth in Dante's expression died, replaced by a gaze of pure clinical detachment. The narrative was airtight and chillingly plausible, right until the moment his carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Leaning into the suspect's personal space, the veteran agent delivered 7 words that chilled the air. Listen very closely to what I play next. The suspect's mask of mild interest held for exactly 4 seconds before the gravity of the situation hit him. The audio crackled to life with his own voice, a damning intercept from a burner phone linked to his cell. The timestamp was 2:47 a.m., recorded the very night the victim went missing. On the tape, there was no grief, only the cold, surgical tone of a man finishing a job. He was conferring with the abductor, mapping the operation's logistics. They analyzed the victim's rapid physiological decline. They reviewed an extortion strategy that had already collapsed, debating her ultimate fate as the situation spiraled into total chaos. He wasn't merely a bystander. He was the primary operator, dictating commands with absolute authority. He detailed specific conditions of the victim's confinement that only the master designer of the abduction could possibly know. Leaked tapes now archive every fabrication and failed alibi secrets originally intended to remain buried within our classified files. His persona as the devoted family member dissolved within 30 seconds of audio. Yet, the real revelation wasn't in the speech. It manifested in the suspect's visceral physical transformation as the recording played. It was a biological surrender that couldn't be masked. The lens captured the color draining away as his skin turned leaden. His extremities, which had remained motionless for over 60 minutes, suddenly succumbed to violent, involuntary tremors. This frantic movement was unmistakable, even through the grain of the overhead surveillance feed. His hollow denial that doesn't sound like my voice was immediately betrayed by his own physiology. This dissonance between his vocal lies and physical collapse left a chilling implication about the depth of his treachery. The electronic trail. We shifted focus from human testimony to the binary certainty of forensic data. As he fabricated desperate excuses for the call, once those files went public, the truth became undeniable, starting with that 90-minute charade at 5:30 a.m. Claiming it was a corporate misunderstanding or a private dispute involving a relative named Marcus. Dante offered no rebuttal. The weight of the evidence made argument unnecessary. Instead, he reached down, hoisting a massive dossier onto the laminate surface. The impact echoed through the sterile room. Inside were transcripts of every digital exchange between the suspect and Marcus during the 3 weeks preceding the disappearance. Dante recited the logs in a flat, metronomic tone that stripped the words of any remaining humanity. With each entry, he slid a page across, forcing the man to confront his own betrayals rendered in stark ink. Thursday is the window. Her habits are set in stone. Kill the porch camera first. I will pinpoint its location. The rear entry is the primary vulnerability. Avoid the front, it's too hardened. She doses her sedatives at 10 o'clock. Give it 60 minutes to settle. These weren't vague notes. They formed a tactical roadmap for a home invasion and subsequent snatch. Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law entered the interview room looking unkempt, still clad in his pajamas, a calculated image of disarray. They exposed an intimate understanding of the victim's domestic patterns and her moments of peak vulnerability. This was high-level intelligence, provided by someone who had shared her dinner table. The woman he claimed to cherish had been reduced to a target profile within his own cold-blooded calculations. The investigation continued its systematic deconstruction of his lies, peeling back his facade with undeniable forensic facts. Buried under this mountain of proof, he reached for one final lifeline. claiming his device had been remotely compromised. He then accused Marcus of manufacturing the logs, but his theory collided with the wall of technical reality. We had already mapped out his potential escape routes and blocked every one. Network triangulation placed his handset at his office and home, syncing perfectly with his financial transactions and message timestamps. The digital history was mirrored across 4 separate, immutable repositories. Handsets, provider servers, and remote storage all told the same story. The math for a lie no longer worked. With puffy eyes and a weary stance, he immediately began performing a masterclass in manufactured bewilderment for the cameras. He was caught in a digital net of his own weaving. And then we found the evidence of lethal intent. Our working theory, a botched extortion attempt, was about to be replaced by a much darker, calculated reality. Dante prepared to reveal the most harrowing discovery extracted from the suspect's personal hard drive. He explained that 3 days prior to the arrest, the suspect had deployed a professional-grade shredding utility. He tried to burn the evidence, but our forensic lab successfully reconstructed every byte from the digital ashes. Dante lifted the forensic report, reciting the suspect's browser history with a chilling, clinical detachment. The junior investigator's hand froze. He could only stare at the desk, paralyzed by the coldness of the data. The initial queries followed the predictable logic of a calculated criminal operation. Avoidance of biological signatures and untraceable crypto transfers. Then, the algorithm turned predatory. Maximum survival duration for an octogenarian deprived of cardiac stimulants. Squinting against the clinical glare, he feigned total ignorance as to why the Bureau would wake him before dawn. He was researching the victim's specific pharmaceutical lifeline, and then the search history took a final, lethal turn. Arid terrain corpse disposal techniques. A clinical comparison of federal prison terms for abduction versus homicide. Then, we hit the final query, logged 72 hours before Nancy vanished. The implications turned the air in the room to ice. Does the secondary player get leniency if the asset expires while in custody? We weren't looking at a snatch and grab anymore. This was a blueprint for an execution. The preparation didn't stop at the snatch. He was calculating the aftermath of her demise before he'd even laid a finger on her. That single find shifted our entire tactical landscape. Relying on our initial profile became a liability. We stopped asking who took Nancy Guthrie. The haunting priority became whether she was still breathing. Each tick of the clock in that box was a moment her pulse might be flickering out.